Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to our guest. But before I do that, here's a quote that I picked just for this episode. He who risks and fails can be forgiven. He who never risks and never fails is a failure in his whole being. Paul Tillich. My good friend, Nathan Merrill, is here today. Vision, stone, and tile, the architect of the entrepreneurial deconstruction. God, I hope not to brand him as this. He is such a thoughtful leader and friend of the Culture Matters podcast and friend of me, philosopher in his own right, and I would say an acknowledge what's the word, like a supporter, yeah, definitely, of 30 days of thought. So, and that, like, really, I appreciate that. And thanks for coming on the show. Over 17 years he's been specializing, at least in my observations, in tile, and
Yep.
has had various businesses and has his own walk we'll get into. But anyway, thanks for coming on the show and talking life, business, tile, and existentialism.
Yeah, well, it's very exciting. I wish every podcast were just like this. You know what I mean? I think you're this way. Anyone that I meet, I just want to get to the nuts and bolts of things really quick, you know?
Hmm.
Maybe that's a personality flaw, maybe it's a personality benefit or positive. I'm not sure. But it has turned me into an interesting person over time, I feel like. So I'm excited to two or 3 years coming this podcast has been. So this is very exciting for me.
Have you been on many podcasts? And the reason I ask is just, I'll preface the question, is I've seen you put out education in the sense of your thoughts, your views, and conceptualizations around life and really your business and the tile business. So have you been on shows from that?
I have, but because I'm so niched in construction, they're usually construction oriented podcasts. And what typically ends up happening is I have a tendency to just go off into space, like my mind just kind of goes that direction. So it'll start with simple things like, well, how do let's go over square foot pricing or, simple stuff. And before you know it, I'm quoting Dostoevsky and Nietzsche, and where these, I got this blue collar guy like crying tears on his podcast. So I love podcasts. I think I've been on maybe six or eight at this point. At
Wow.
some point, maybe by the grace of providential guidance, I will be able to start my own. But I battle a lot of internal devils in terms of belief concerning those things. So not only devils, some of them are angels. I just try and really I like fitting timing. I like things to be timed properly. And so who knows, maybe someday I'll have my own podcast set up exactly how I want it to be set up. So
Mm,
with guests like you on my podcast.
thanks. Yeah, I'd be honored. I guess firstly, what was the impetus to get involved in tile? You coming out of what, high
Um,
school?
yeah, no, before high school. So I'm second generation. There was no impetus as much as there was just here's a trial
Wow.
and that's that. So school, I logged out in like the fourth grade. I was there and I excelled. I got good marks. I never studied anything because I hated it. I did well just by virtue of being there. I did well. But I clocked out in the fourth grade. I very early on perceived that something in me just it didn't click with. So yeah, tools were just given to me by my dad and blue collar was the path. And I don't know, I latched onto it.
Did you at the time project yourself in the future thinking I'll own a business someday. I'll work for myself.
No, I always knew I would work for myself. There was no other option for me. I had ideas. I had lots of grandiose ideas about what could be, but I didn't know myself. And so I tried a lot of different things, ultimately to discover not that I was incapable, but that I was unsatisfied with those endeavors. Um, so no, early on, there was really no deliberate thought. It was just the way it was. I was making money doing tile work essentially from day one. I didn't go about it in the traditional entrepreneurial way. It was just I had tools, I could go find work, and I went and found work, and that was that. And there's an artistic side to tile that I enjoy. Sorry, I
What
thought you
is
were going to say
oh
something.
no, well, I got lots of things in my brain to slow down here. Tile.
Yeah.
What is it for the layperson outside of just,
So,
you know, okay, it's kind of like, someone that has no concept of it, you
mhm,
kind of take it for granted.
yeah. Yeah, it's floor coverings, wall coverings, right? So that's the basic overview of it. It's an ancient trade. It's arguably as ancient as any trade. Goes back thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years.
Wow.
And I would argue actually that the nature of the trade has devolved over the millennia because early on it was all art. It was just art, the
Wow.
tile work. Um, so, it's all these ingredients. You got silica and this and that, and they got these big vats of ingredients and they press it into molds and they fire it in kilns and they cut it and all that. But it's impervious. It's porcelain is 99.4% waterproof. So it's hard, it's enduring, it's impervious. If it's done right, it can last for hundreds of years. In
Really?
2023, most people don't know that because it's not done right most of the time. Most people's tile just fails after a couple years. It's just not done right, unfortunately. So,
Why?
um, well, we're in a very, I would say that civilizations in the world, as technologically advanced as they are, they're also they're very consumptive. And so the whole building industry is extremely consumptive. And things are not made to last in the same ways, which I don't, I'm not going to be the Grinch about that. I, I 100% appreciate technology and where it's at, but they're just not built the same as they used to be. And there's positives to that, and there's also negatives to that. But tile, I give people the 20-year warranties in their showers, and it's like, it's pretty rare in our industry because anymore it's a taillight warranty. And if you take them to court, it's a 12-month warranty. So
Wow.
it's just the nature of construction in first world countries. It's just extremely quick, in and out, get it done as cheap as possible. They're going to remodel it or it's going to be bulldozed anyways. It's just assumed that it's going to fall apart. And so why the hang up on artistry and craftsmanship?
Whoa, there's a lot there. What do your customers like? What's been the feedback from your customers of your view of this versus because I'm sure they've worked in many
Mhm.
um
Um,
laborers.
so now I'm a one-man band. It's just me, and it's counterintuitive to, I'm sure, much of your audience because you put so much focus on the entrepreneurial route and path, and which is it's a beautiful thing. Um, but the self-awareness to know whether or not you have the aptitude to build a company, to
Mm,
build, that's a living organism. You understand that. Um, I have yet to discover that belief in myself. Not that I'm incapable, but anyways, my customers, I'm very fortunate. I got, I'll tie the social media thing into it. I kind of got interested in Instagram 5 or 6 years ago, just for fun. I liked the expressive part of it. I liked showcasing the work. Um, it never felt like a pride thing to me. It really just felt like expression. It felt like I could showcase things, and I really enjoyed that. So over the years, it's garnered me a lot of attention in tile, which has led me to every opportunity I could want in tile work. So my customers now primarily seek me out, which is great. It's so everything that I do is not the advice you get in books, like at all, but it's completely worked for me, and I love it. So if I could figure out a way to brand it and package it and resell it, I would, but I don't know if I can quite figure all of that out. But my customers seek me out and they want what I offer.
And what do you offer?
I offer attention to detail on such an extreme level when it comes to tile work that it usually blows people's mind. I can hyper focus on the smallest details to the nth degree, and I love that. Like that's my jam. I love being able to hyper focus on the most technical and difficult parts of an install because at the end of the day, every job that I do, I am looking for a certain feeling. I'm looking for a certain satisfaction out of it. And that I've just discovered this about myself that comes from doing the absolute best that I can. It's always within a structured framework that does limit me. I've yet to find the elusive client that offers me the unlimited checkbook, but they're out there, and that's
Yeah,
only a matter of
yeah.
time. It's only a matter of time before someone really lets me loose because there's more that I could bring to the table.
Why is there a value to tile? Like what in the absence of quality tile, what can happen to, because I'm thinking like what could actually happen to the home?
hmm Well, a lot. If you look just up the statistics of home insurance claims and damage to homes, it's almost all oriented around water damage. Not all of it, but a vast majority of it is around water damage. And within that, a subset of that damage is showers. They leak. And so think about it this way: a tile shower, this is porcelain, so it's water impervious. But if it's nested within a substrate that is not impervious, then the damage is not happening on the surface. The damage is happening below the surface. And so what you see happen in showers that aren't done correct is you go to tear them out and the homes will be damaged to the structural level because of festering issues that were not obvious. So
Wow.
it's it's a I don't want to marry myself to this issue like this is some sort of catastrophic thing. Oh my goodness, we're solving this problem. It's not that big of a deal. I'm a tile nerd completely, right? And I get the sickest of tile nerds of anyone because people send me pictures all the time of crappy tile work. And I'm always just like, don't you ever get bored of this? Like, come on. Like, I don't care about the crappy tile work. Like, I'm over it. I've seen a million images of crappy tile work.
So
Um,
you're invested in the process of what it of who you become. Is there something of that psychologically
yes,
here?
yes,
Can you unpack
100%.
why and is that, can the audience draw on that?
Anyone can learn anything that they need to about everything from one thing that they can look at long enough. For me, it just happened to be manual labor. I've spent enough time working with my body, my hands, my physical muscles, doing something that at times I absolutely did not want to do, hated it. But I had to find whatever it is internally that allowed me to keep doing it. Um, with this belief that if I could do it long enough, something about it would unfold to me. Some beauty in it would reveal itself. And that's just what happened. It went exactly that way. I got tired of feeling like everything I was doing was a stepping stone to the next thing. I wanted to know about the actual thing I was doing instead of just using it to get to the next thing. It's a Buddhism idea, this idea of the unfolding flower, the lotus flower. Things manifest in time. They take time to reveal themselves, and the beauty of life can be revealed to anyone if they can see what they're looking at in the present moment. And so it's tile work. That's it. People say it all the time. It's just tile work, you nerd. But it's like, well, no, that is a confession of your own psychological state. Sorry, I see your gears
No, this
turning.
is, we need to keep going here. It's a confession.
Right.
I'm thinking like Saint Augustine, give
Mm-hmm.
me continence, but not yet. I don't know why. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a convention of your own psychological state.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, just looking at it on the surface level.
Mm-hmm.
Can you want? What do you mean by
Yeah.
that?
I mean that if a person is if they think that the way that a human should be geared is to view everything as a stepping stone, then they'll never understand or appreciate the value of the individual step. The individual step is the autonomous the it is the mechanical process that makes up everything in the universe. Everything in the universe is it's phenomena. It's it's let's think of it in terms of if we were to slice up and atomize the whole world, which we can't actually do, but if you could, what you find is you're breaking it down into infinite steps. And there's a beauty. Some people are geared to look at the universe holistically. They want to take the whole thing in and be overwhelmed by the magnitude of that and
Hmm.
the infinite nature of that. But there's an inverse to that, which is where the route that I've gone. And it's how infinitesimal can you become in your appreciation of everything? And so the psychological projection, meaning that if you are using things to get to the next stage, then you are undermining the psychological development of your own personal beauty, your own individualistic nature. It's undermined because everything takes what it takes. There is no shortcut, there is no elongation of the process. It all unfolds exactly as it unfolds, and there's no other way for it to unfold. And so I guess what I'm saying is that let me think of an actual example of this.
Well, I think, well, couldn't we use it in business, like the herder
Mhm.
of the laborers versus like the inherently in business, the more people that can take my seat as once a specialist, there's like there's a level of even if my intentions are not to succumb to that entitlement, isn't it inherent in it? Like I've got to fight that. Like even
Yeah,
if you like this genius work you're putting together, more people want it. They
hmm,
want the it. They want the outcome.
right,
And it was
right,
your gift, your everything that you just articulated, your philosophy, your autobiography that came before the product, the outcome.
right, right,
There's a commoditization of your spirit
right, right.
by
And
by
that's everything I fight.
or go ahead, sir.
Well, I was gonna say, and that is everything I fight. Um, I don't want my spirit to be commoditized. I want what I bring forward to be as singularly me as possible. And it's not out of pride, it's out of the belief that there's a transcendent beauty in that type of self-discovery and ownership of oneself. It's the Nietzschean idea. It's the torment of owning your own mind. But there's also a beauty in it. It's also, I don't think, I think that to bring in another, like Jordan Peterson, he is brilliant, but he talks about Nietzsche a lot. And he talks about seeing past the monster, seeing past the darkness, finding the thing on the other side of it. Um, I don't know that I understand it in the exact way that he is laying it out. I think that there is implicit, I think that the darkness and the light are one, and there is no chronological, there is no linear path through the darkness. There is the darkness and there is the light, and the path is no path. The path is the radical and perfect acceptance of reality, that that is what is. I don't know, that's pretty heavy there. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Well, if it did, we'd be probably doing something else right now.
That's true.
Yeah, it was so good. Like, so, um, where my curiosity in that is part of what your call to the listener is um in a granular level, like why are you doing what you're doing? What are you getting out of it?
Um,
Can we start
anyone that tells this is maybe a this is maybe a matter of self-knowledge, and maybe this is a matter of the conclusions of my own self-reflection, which could be completely wrong. But I think that anyone that tells you on the surface why they're doing what they're doing is fundamentally undermining the infinite complexities of being a human. I'm not so concerned with the why. I'm more concerned with the how. The why to me at the end of the day is irrelevant because the world will go on no matter what my why is. It's irrelevant to me. I am irrelevant. You're irrelevant. We're all irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't mean that we don't matter. We're part of a relevant thing, but there is no discoverable why about the self that will get you to the center of the mystery. There is no discoverable center of a mystery when you are an infinitesimal part of the mystery.
Mm.
Like you and I, we are just an expression of point of view within something infinitely incomprehensible. You know what I mean? So this idea of why, like the Simon Sinek book, Start With Why, it has lots of pragmatic value in terms of building business and chronological processes. But in terms of philosophy, it's
Well,
absolute rubbish.
maybe practical in terms of
Right,
persuasion,
right. In terms of
persuasion
persuasion,
of
right, right,
power, right?
right,
Start with why. So those that have
right.
none from their labor are called to your false why. I'm curious if you, it's been a while since I read the book, but like, right, the
Right.
premise is we're starting with why we're doing what we're doing. And with the negation of the how, like a leader that's in would you say authentic? Maybe authentic in the sense that they're in that progression, they're in that forward movement towards their genius.
Right,
With the
right.
negation of that, the why just becomes an ideology.
Becomes an ideology. And an ideology is okay if you are of an observant state. If you understand that this is pragmatic, that this is an ideology that at the end of the day is arbitrary and that has resonated with me in the way that I've chosen to adopt it,
Hmm.
then that's okay. What's not okay, maybe, I don't want to say that like I know this for sure, but what my intuition is on the subject is that does not resonate with human beings in a way that has a connection to whatever it is that is divine about the universe. There's something divine about it, and we see that in the arts. and it has some sort of transcendent and lasting strength to it to skip all of that pragmatic thinking and get to the heart of the issue. And the heart of the issue is we're all pieces of something that we desperately want to understand, but it's wrapped up into the nature of that machine that we cannot understand it. And that creates the dynamical tension. You've talked about this tension. That dynamical tension is created through restriction. And this adoption of arbitrary ideologies is naive in a sense. It's a belief that you have discovered something divine. You've discovered, like, because it all stems from this idea that God is a conceptualizable being. It's like, well, if you can't even come close to conceptualizing the universe, why would you think that if there were a divine creator of it, that you could, what can you know of that type of infinite and omniscient power? All that you can really do is position yourself in relationship to it to experience it, not to know it, right? So there's the phenomenology of it and there's the gnosis of it, and they're different things altogether.
Are you okay? So your work, your body of work, the actual
Mhm.
business that you're a part of,
Right.
is it not, is it then an expression of your philosophy, which
It
is
is.
step by step, stone by stone, tile by tile, to decrease the likelihood of it being valueless. Okay, there's like a
Right.
nihilism in the current culture,
Right.
which is revealed
Exactly.
in the consumerism and
Right.
the technological advancement leads to the entitlement that we don't really give a shit about our tile.
Right.
As
Right. Right.
the artisans,
Right.
the
Mm.
artistry, the mason, the master, the
Right.
apprentice mentor relationship has died,
Right.
and let's get it done as quickly as possible, as cheaply as possible. And
Hmm.
no one wins in that. You're saying not only does the client not win in that, but the laborer loses not just future business,
Right.
their soul,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
like the
They do.
capacity for soul, or like the capacity for spirit,
Yeah. Yeah. Their capacity to understand soul, their capacity
through
to
the interaction of
experience it.
labor.
Right. Through the interaction of labor. And so, because my discovery of these things was through the interaction of labor, I then just extrapolated out and thought I can see the same beauty in any process because these type of individuals are discoverable in anything. And so if that's the case, then it's not
Which type of individuals?
particular, say it again,
What type of individuals?
the type of individual that can understand the beauty of the minutia, the beauty of every moment standing on its own. The I did you listen to oh, what's his name? He's a comedian, but he's very intellectual. Duncan Trussell. Is that
I've
his
never
name?
heard of them.
Duncan.
I'll write it down.
He's a very funny guy. He's into psychedelics and all. He's very funny, but he's very deep. Um, and he put forward this notion that the present moment is the it is the tip of evolution. It is the absolute pinnacle of what the entire cosmos or universe or whatever is doing. We at the present moment are always at the very front of that. There's no other existence in which you can be. History, well, I can argue against that actually because it's arguable that the ideal realm, as it's encapsulated in history, is realer than the present moment, but it doesn't feel that way as a living being. And it
Hmm.
doesn't look that way when you examine the emergent patterns of the universe. What it looks like to me is that the closer you are to the never-ending and infinite front edge of reality, the closer you are to that chasm between materialism and idealism. There's a chasm there where the two worlds touch, and the best way to experience that feeling, if you will, is to not project out through the mind into the future or into the past through memory, but is to be where the universe, that's a funny, I feel like a hippie saying that, where the
No, we're just getting
cosmos
started.
is
This is good.
currently,
Say that again. I was
where things was, I don't, how exactly did I say that?
well,
Is to
not to be in the
be,
future, not to be in the past, to be where you are now.
those are abstract notions. The future and the past are abstract notions that have obviously mathematical and scientific and statistical value for creating things and systems, complex systems, but they're all still just approximations. They're not actually the front edge of what is. The front edge of what is what's going on right now. Here we are.
Well, I'm curious of your thoughts on this. The here we
Mhm.
are right now, how I relate to you in the here we are right now, based on external stimulus, has a relationship with what has occurred in my past
Right.
that's below my awareness and what I idealize for the future at
It does.
awareness as well as
Right.
potentially below. So I'm curious what you think of, like the
Right.
past and the future
Right.
influence how I can relate in the moment. So this is where
Right.
the idea of loving my enemies
Hmm.
has
Hmm.
become like a business. There's practical utility in that idea in my estimation. Because if I'm
Yeah.
in an argument with a customer over something,
Hmm.
I'm bringing my past, and I'm impelled in that dialogue based on my idealized self. Like,
Yeah, but
right? Go ahead, go ahead.
it's all approximation. You're bringing your approximation of the past to the present, but those approximations are only trustworthy to the extent that your internal models are accurate. Because we all know our internal models of past are not accurate. They're what we think they are. And so I have found that the best way to relate to a person in conflict is to drop every ideological assumption of what the past is, and in dialogue discover what is your version of that and what is my version of that, and can we approximate something in the present closer to reality, because reality is a hologram. We think we understand it, but we
And how would
don't.
you go about doing that practically?
Practically, it is always through the feeling of understanding. It is through understanding, getting to the point that you understand the issue in the mind of the client to the extent that they now flip their psychological temperament toward you and are on your side in the belief that you understand what they're saying. So it's not pragmatic, like I want to understand it to manipulate the scenario. It is an actual embodiment of not just their logical reductions of the situation, but their actual emotional state in that moment. Because if you can resonate with a person in that way, you will remove all doubt from their mind that you are trying to malign them, that you intend malice toward them. Now, none of that works if in fact you do, because that's where manipulation tactics come in. And what I perceive with many entrepreneurs is that's just what they're doing. They just don't know it.
Do
They
you think
don't.
that's a symptom of, if we go to the beginning of the conversation, so a symptom
Mhm.
of not being focused on the step or the micro expression of one's being, being revealed in their artistry of their work, a symptom of
Yeah.
the not being focused on the labor would be vice, as in a sense, the overemphasis on the outcome negates the interaction. So meaning you're making an argument for your philosophy that it's going to lead to, whether you're trying to do this or not, this is my view of it. Your philosophy will decrease the likelihood of the type of behavior that would lead to taking advantage of the customer, manipulating the customer.
I think so. And I think that my honest confession on it is I have felt without manipulation for probably 6 years now. I've felt unmanipulative in interactions. That sounds like a really proud confession, but it is how I feel. And it has been through the embodiment of these ideas. Um, if someone, there was something else you said that I wanted to make a comment on, but I can't remember exactly what it was. If someone has an issue with me, I would rather maximally take responsibility for the sake of my own autonomous experience
Mm.
and for the sake of a belief. This is where my transcendent beliefs will show through. For the sake of a transcendent belief that the entire universe is, in fact, self reflexive and aware and able, in shades perhaps only, to know what it's doing. That's a statement of faith. I don't know that any amount of AI or quantum computing or philosophy can ultimately prove that. It's unprovable, I think. Um, but yeah, yeah, what you said is accurate. So,
I'll take it.
yeah,
It's so funny
yeah,
because as long as just say that after the end of each of these.
yeah, yeah.
Such a
What you
fun,
said is accurate. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Good. We're on the same page. I'm glad. uh,
It's hilarious to me. Um,
yeah.
it's because I want to go back to the business for a second. Because I look at,
Okay.
well, my at the juncture where I'm at as a consultant and as a firm,
Mm,
business is a medium for us to represent ourselves in all
mhm.
facets of ourselves.
Right.
So reveal our character, reveal our cultures for what we really are, who we really can be, how we actually relate to each other, how
Yeah.
we re- relate to ourselves through our relating of others. Yeah, it's like too much Kierkegaard.
Yeah.
So in that capacity, right now I am talking to a business owner who you're putting out your thoughts, you're putting out who you said you're expressing yourself through Instagram in video form and picture form, showing your work, showing your product. You're showing up to these clients, and in my view, giving them 2,000 years of delivery. Like there's a historical reference point here of value.
Right.
And you're saying that people are coming to you to do this work. Like so now a lot of business owners they dream of this.
Right.
So
It's easy when you're a one-man band. When
what do you
it's
mean by that?
when it's just you, I don't have I am not the type of person that is motivated by financial incentive. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't love money. I do, like all of us, but I um that's not all there is to this whole thing, and you understand that. But I don't like exactly how I said that. Let me backtrack. Um, hmm. I value expression. I value expression above almost everything because I think that the if I were to observe the patterns on Earth and think, what is what fundamentally is everything? It's some sort of expression because here it is. It's this Heideggerian notion of my mind is continually blown by the fact that there's something and not nothing. And that notion I've never been able to get over. And I can't help but connect that notion to the act of expression. And
Hmm.
so my thinking has translated, it's trickled down into this idea that if I can express myself in the most authentic way that I can discover how to do that, which is not an easy process to discover how to be yourself. You think, oh, that's simple. It's not a simple process, it's extremely complicated. The reason you know that it is look at the universe. If the universe is an expression of something, well, it's a very complicated world now, isn't it? And so, for us to get to the notion of what our own personal expression, I don't want to say is supposed to be, but could be, to be maximally in harmony with how patterns emerge, and for whatever reason, our our conception of beauty within those patterns, the beauty of symmetry and pattern and expression, this is universal language. It's not singular to just the artist. It's both the observer and the observed, and it is undeniably universal for everyone. There's value in expression, and I try my best to orient everything that I do around this notion that all of my interaction will be expressive. It will all be to the best of my searching abilities, which are limited, but to the best of my capacity, it will be around an authentic expression of what I personally perceive as, I don't want to say virtuous, but worthwhile.
Hmm.
And I really don't know. That can be found in any endeavor, that viewpoint. Um, it gets complicated with businesses as they grow because now you're part of a larger organism that is the same organism. These are infinite reflections, so it's fractal. It's the same thing on a larger scale, but the game is even more complicated.
So this is, I wrote this down, that
Art versus artist. Yeah.
like
We
the art is where you start. That's stupid rhyme, not trying to rhyme here, but the culture, like between you and you're serving the customer. You're a servant.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's a humility there. There's an openness there. There's a vulnerability. There's a free expression. There's an insecurity because it's in the inverse of secure. It,
Yeah,
it
it
and,
is.
and something blossoms from that. It's about the
Mhm.
art. Like the outcome's what? The art. It's the product, right? And it's at its most refined point. But as soon as you everyone knows and looks at you, then it's about you. So like the art
Well,
undermines the artist. I'm just curious what you think of that. Just as
well, I
the
think
business undermines the founder, the business, we succumb to the powers of the institution.
the things which we create transcend us. They don't undermine us, they overtake us. Um, which is it's a sacrifice in the process, which is the nature of everything. Everything is a sacrifice. There would be nothing if there were not demarcation. There can be no white without black, there can be no light without darkness. It's all relational. It's all interconnected in a way that is irreducibly complex. The world, the universe is irreducibly complex, and the way that you know that it is because here it is. It can be no other way because here it is. And so I don't know, the art versus artist thing is difficult because you indeed want to lose yourself. It is the loss of self to your own detriment. You have an idealistic belief that that sacrifice is the path of maximal fulfillment for anyone. And I don't know that that is ultimately the most virtuous ideal to have. It's just the one that I come back to.
I would like your feedback on this. So I am the creator, right? I'm the
Hmm.
artist. And this can resonate with anyone. Someone creating, someone's starting a business, or they work for a company, but they're completely immersed in their craft.
Hmm.
They're so immersed in their craft, they get promoted.
Hmm.
And that undermines every. So
Yeah.
where I'm going with this is the artist has this product, and now the product is getting attention. Or I'm sorry, the product gets ample attention. That's fine. But in the more art, the attention eventually goes to the artist, where then
Right.
so you're worshiping your process. And then if you worship your process enough, you have enough admirers that you become worshipped. And there's a deconstructive element in it was easy to worship the process when no one was worshiping me. And now
You
I'm being
do.
worshipped because I worshiped the process, right? They got the product. And now the masses, the crowd is coming in, and they worship me for the worship I had done through the process to create the product. And if I'm not
Right.
able to burden,
Right.
if I'm not able to carry that through my own
Right.
awareness and the integration of my values, I can lose sight of
Exactly.
everything and lose the
Right.
world.
Right. Well,
Like,
that's the biblical idea of gaining the whole world and losing your soul. Jesus Christ was a sacrifice that gained the whole world and did not lose his soul. And so you have a dichotomy. You have that is you're absolutely right. That is it's like this. There is no one or the other. There is no division that would say one is is higher hierarchy. I
yeah,
can't. How do you
hierarchically.
say hierarchically
Yeah.
more important than the other? These are emergent things. They're things traveling in their own infinite way, in their own direction, and they all interrelate, but they don't necessarily delineate linear movement in a way that's a narrative or a forward moving process that would bring you to a conclusion that this thing is going somewhere, right? It's not necessarily a this, then that, then this. It's it's all of it at once, infinitely happening with an inability to demarcate in order of like priority or importance. All of those notions about those things are arbitrary. They're all abstract. They're derivative notions that we write on paper, but they're no thing that is experientially true in reality. The things that are experientially true in reality are only in infinite happening. Everything else is the musings of philosophers. And I love the musings of philosophers, but they go off into these continual contradictory lines of thinking because of the phenomenological experience of linear motion. And that experience of linear motion is not fake. I don't want to say it's fake. I don't want to say it's not real. It's part of the hologram of everything.
What
It's
is it
part
not
of the
what we're
illusion
doing
of it
now?
all. It's 100% what we're doing
And we're
now.
doing it
Yes.
now, because why? We are attempting to navigate this experience in a constructive way as
Hmm.
opposed to a deconstructive way within the boundaries that have been created. Like
Yeah.
prior to our like they're
What's
already predisposed in a
yeah.
sense.
It's because we have one hand in heaven and one hand in earth. We're always bounded. And so we're always predisposed to this, but it doesn't mean that you can't have awareness of not the inverse, but the alternate possibility. Um, I think that's where the symbolism of Michelangelo comes in, where God's reaching down to touch man and Adam's reaching up to touch God. But if you look at Adam, who would be representative of the materialistic plight that we find ourselves in, his hand is like it's lazy. It's kind of, I don't know if you've seen that,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah,
not
yeah.
quite, they're not touching. If you look close, Michelangelo is a genius. They're not touching. God's hand is outstretched, and you can see the sinews in the arm. You can see the structure, the power in the arm to get to his creation. But the creation is the thing that garners all the attention and lives in luxury and
I know.
lazily seeks God. But there's a gap there that can never be crossed. And so that's where religion comes into play. Religion dwells in the chasm,
How do I
not
not just deconstruct all this to the highest? It's like if I cooperate over enough series of games, I'm gonna get the power.
you're going to acquire power for sure. And but that doesn't mean a lot of people acquire power, but what you do with power is a different story altogether. There are many ways to acquire power. If you're a person that's naive enough to think that you've figured out the one way to acquire power, then you're surely someone who's in extreme danger of having it, because there are infinite ways to get power. It's much harder to deny power. Think about the manifestation when Christ came down to the earth. It was not one of infinite ways to acquire power. If you believe the theology of omnipotence, he had all power. So what was he after? The biblical message is the inverse of that. It's the path of no power. It's the path of hiding power completely and absolutely. It's the path of God losing himself to himself. And then when you look at that, to tie it back into what you were saying about the art losing himself, or the artist losing himself to the art, and vice versa, and the
Well, the
worship
symptom
dynamic,
of the art, the worship that comes with it, right?
the worship that comes with it. Right, right.
Yeah,
The symptom of it, what
being
the
worshipped.
outcome of it. Yeah, that is where what you say about the symbolism of God the Father and God the Son, who ultimately receives the worship. You know what I mean? Because you see, there's that thing. That's the art in the artist. Jesus Christ was the art, and God the Father was the artist. And but then you've got this third dynamic, which is the Holy Spirit, and I think that is actually a thing that is the animating force of all of it, which is the real
Is that the interaction?
mystery. I think so. I think it's the dynamical interaction of all of these things. It's the animation of all of it. I really actually think that it's contained within the symbolism in Zen, the yin and yang. You've got the one in the other, and you've got the interplay, but then what you really have is the complete interacting system, the thing that animates and brings motion to the whole thing, or at least the illusion of motion. And who knows, maybe the Holy Spirit is the illusion. I don't know.
It's psychologically, I find people on a daily basis and a weekly basis and a moment to moment basis. And if I'm not honest with myself, if I'm not aware, it'll be me next in the next moment,
Mhm.
drawn to those that are testing us less
Mhm.
and either drawn away or told to push away those that test us most, which reveals that contradiction of character.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I need to lean
Um,
into the, let's say that, it's easy to get along with this conversation.
right.
These ideas that I'm sharing, they're going to be tested on the battlefield of the next person that
Yeah.
comes on the show
Right.
that spits on me.
Right. Yeah, you have to lean into opposition. You have to embrace it. You have to embrace pain. And that's a value connected with the labor thing. You have to lean into it and you have to embrace it and you have to accept it. On the surface, we can label things as opposition if we would like, but it's not really. It's part of one thing. It's part of a dynamical relationship that gives structure to everything. Without it, you've talked on this, without the opposition, there is no definition. There is no, to the extent that we want to place value in logic, there is no value to logic without the illogical. You see what I'm saying? You need the push and pull dynamic. And that is borne out on every stage of things, in every observable stage of the universe, from the grandest things we can take in, the farthest reaches we can see with our telescopes, or the smallest we can go into the quantum realm. You see structure borne out, and you see this relational, dynamical thing borne out that is only given existence through the push and pull of embracing and opposing. Like it's it's it. I think in the Bible, now remember, I think you know this about me. I was a pastor for 10 years. So many of my references, they
Wow.
come
Yeah.
from religious symbolism. I'm not a pastor now, but I have a lot of things to draw on there. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And it says, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Um, he keeps going. And then a couple verses later, he says, and God divided the day from the night. What would compel God to be the author of division? And the only conclusion that I can come to is division is the only thing which gives structure. Death is the only thing which gives life. Life is the only thing which gives death. Um, it's all dynamical and it's all interrelated in a way that is I think that if you I don't know pragmatically or practically the ultimate conclusion of these thoughts, but it feels like to me that if a person can move themselves toward these thoughts, then their entire emotional understanding of other human beings blossoms. And now you see beauty in everyone because you have found it in the particular of one exact thing. It could be even in yourself, it could be in something external. This idea of external and internal, those are abstract notions too. They're not really a thing like we say that they are. They are they're notions. And so if you can move toward that notion that um this is tough. My mind struggles on this one because I don't know how to conceptualize a supreme being within the language of unity. My mind wants to go to ultimate unity with everything, but that flies in the face of everything. Everything implicitly contains this idea of structure. This is a very who am I trying to think of? Who is the guy who wrote all the books about nuclear facts and uh, you know who I'm talking about. He's very mathematical.
Oh. Hmm.
Bertrand Russell is a big
Oh.
fan of his.
Oh. Wittgenstein?
Wittgenstein. These are very Wittgenstein ideas. Wittgenstein was a person who I feel like is primarily misunderstood by most quote unquote philosophers. I don't think that they're actually quite able to enter into
Well, yeah. Why
the
else would he
beauty of
say what he said about Kierkegaard?
because he was on another level. That guy was on another level. And I'm fascinated by Wittgenstein, like utterly fascinated by him. I still struggle with his thought. I try, but it's one of those things where it's like, man, you go so far and your mind can only take you so far before it's like it's delusion or it's genius, and I don't know which.
Well, okay, in that stream of thought, though, how important, like fundamentally from a practical outcome standpoint, day-to-day living, is it how helpful can it be to look at things in that way? Like just as you may express that you're struggling with Wittgenstein, others on the show may never have come across even that name or may struggle with this conversation. And just as they may need compassion and open interaction with their enemies, um, we may need that with them, as
Right.
Wittgenstein may need us.
Right.
Like we're all
Yeah.
at different levels, maybe for
I have a
our lived experience and also our innate proclivities and how they intermesh. That like
right.
ultimately, in a practical sense, isn't it to function in as a species, we have to cooperate with one another over
Right.
long iterations of time. And business is a part of this cooperation as we evolve as a species.
Yeah, assuming that the tenets of evolution are what we think they are, assuming that things are going in the direction that we think that it's going, which is a big assumption. It's a big assumption
Well,
because
even
I
if it
tend to
isn't going, maybe if it isn't going the direction that, well, I'm curious. I want to know what do you mean?
I tend to view things in terms of fractal patterns. I think that in everything there's always a tipping point. A wave always has a tipping point, and everything is energy, everything is waves, everything is dynamical motion, and it's all fractal. And so I think that I want to believe that things, I think we would like to believe that things progress in a forward way that is ultimately good. But that's an abstract notion. I think the larger your conception becomes of the cycles of everything, the more that that function will break down logically. Um, think about this. There's a John, you know John Prine, the singer? He
No.
died a few years ago. He's great. He had this song. It says, Father, forgive us for what we must do. You forgive us and we'll forgive you. And that line has stuck with me forever. God, to the best of my conception of him, is not just the being that offers us forgiveness. He offers us forgiveness because he's compelled to offer it, because there must be implicit guilt over the plight of his creation. If there's implicit guilt over the plight of his creation, then it's showing that everything is a two-way street. If everything's a two-way street, we can't just conceptualize things as large logically as we can. We have to move to the next step, which is outside of the bounds of logic, and now conceptualize the inconceptualizable, which is where the brain stops. You can't quite go there. And so what I'm saying is I think ultimately, just as the wave function collapses in mathematics and these theories of physics when they're trying to integrate these ideas of a photon and a particle, and they do these experiments where observed it's this and unobserved it's that. You've got this interrelated relationship where something actually is two things. And so what I'm saying is you're saying that this is what has to happen for things in this stage of a cycle to progress that way. What I'm saying is there is ultimately an elephant in the room, and that is we want to believe our own myth that the thing that we're part of is only going one direction, but it may not have direction at all. It may be going both direction. It may be going an infinite number of directions. Each point of view that each human being has, I would say you can actually use as an abundant amount of data to look at these patterns because people's lives do not uniformly go one direction. Not at all. They
It's a
go,
tug. It's a tug.
say it again.
It's a tug.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
tug. And so there's like I said, there's a dynamical pressure there. It's that is I think at the real crux of what existential angst is this, that a human being has capacity to go really far. I mean, really far. But everyone will come to their limit. And when you find that limit, um, things break. Everything breaks. The wave function collapses. And when it happens, it has an actual practical implication if you can reverse engineer that and see the ways in which it can affect you day to day. And that is that nothing is as it seems. It, the ways that it seem are valuable, and for pragmatic purposes, it's good to operate within those ways. But concerning the things that we're talking about, uh, this is the Hegelian dialectic thing. You've got this synthesis or thesis, antithesis, and a synthesis. Well, the synthesis is the larger conception of truth. So there's always a larger conception of truth until there's not. And when there's not, you've reached the end of logic. And when you've reached the end of logic, all gods are dead. And that's a Nietzschean idea. Um,
Well, so let's go with that for a second. The
mhm,
synthesis, and taken all the way out, abstracted all the way out, would bring one to the
mhm,
leap, Kierkegaardian leap.
mhm.
So let's
Yeah.
say that that is more than conceptualization. Let's say it's an integration of the self in the interaction of the other. So how I
Mhm,
relate. So if in a practical level with like and I have an employee that's my mentee. I'm the mentor.
mhm.
The leap conceptually, if that increases the likelihood of the individual conceiving to the point of being able to act out the values in
Mhm.
that relationship with the mentee, it's going to transfer the material utility of the mentor through that interaction to the mentee and
Right,
increase the likelihood of the mentee
right.
leveling up from a material standpoint.
Mhm.
Now that's there's an impulse to do that ad
Right,
infinitum. Clearly,
right, right.
that's the historical progress.
That's the human plight. Uh,
Okay.
Sorry, finish your thought.
Well, and if I don't do that, like if I'm not, if that's not a part of my process of evolution, then the power
Mhm,
that I is resultant of the actions that I take in my life towards the
mhm.
subjective aims that create meaning,
Right,
significance.
right,
They're
right.
going to crush me as a result of the act of
Well,
eating.
um,
Because
not necessarily. Um, do you need to say more? I'm sorry. I'm not trying to cut you off.
that should be the title of this.
Did you need to
Be the
say more?
title of this episode. So you need to say more. I'm sorry.
Did you need to say more? I'm sorry. That's the plight of my existence right there. Um, the plight of my existence is, did you need to say more? I'm sorry. Um, yeah, so I think the practicality of the things that I'm saying are completely related to what you're saying, in that you can still honor that relationship, but you've reframed the relationship, and it's no longer a power structure. That's this Nietzschean thing of it's all power. No, if you can reframe the relationship as dynamically integrated and truth in the sense that it is the present reality, then then the weight of it doesn't have to crush you, because the weight of conceptualizing it as a power structure will also crush you when you find you've gone too far, because that's what happens to world leaders who they go too far with wrong conceptions, and that can crush you too. It's not to say that you're not going to get crushed either way, because you will, because Jesus Christ was crushed. Um, and I would argue that he was not a pragmatist in the way that we're thinking about it right now. And I would argue that he was very much a person in tune with the things that I'm saying. But what it ultimately did was it required a crushing from him, and he was crushed. And so you've got the symbolism of Christ in the garden. He's
Is does the
praying.
truth require that then? Like if the truth
Well,
requires that in a sense.
the,
I have to
the
want
truth
it
requires
so
it.
bad to give up the I have to want it so bad. It's like I have to want it so bad to lie, to be a part of the lie, and then attain it and be able to, and then not lie.
Yeah, well, it's two ways you can conceptualize it. If you view it as a lie, then you're conceptualizing it as this power
The wrong
structure.
order, you're saying.
Say it again.
The order's off?
Yeah, well, the conceptualization of the dynamic, the nouns, the way in which you're describing it are not, you may think that they're accurate to what is happening, but I think there's a broader conception, which is that this is a Greek notion with the idea of eye contact. There's an energetic exchange when you're looking at someone. Love is not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. So there's an interconnectedness in all relationship. So the mentee-mentor relationship is not ever a one-way street. If it's conceptualized as a one-way street, then it's a power structure,
Yes, yes,
and the
yes.
power structure will crush. But the catch is even if you don't conceptualize it as a one-way street, you conceptualize it as a two-way street because everything is interconnected. Now you've just transcended one mode of conception and moved to a bigger one and come to a deeper existential threat, which is you're still going to be crushed. And so a step beyond that is a conception of perfection, that the universe is at the most present evolution that it could be, that all things are presently exactly as they ought to be.
Huh.
That's a conception. And a conception is still an abstraction, it's still a model of what's going on. That's all it can ever be, and that's all we can ever do. And so ultimately, existential angst is pointing at the plight of being a human. And what I'm saying is all of that is philosophical baggage
Mm.
that you can see through and simply harmonize with what is. And so the practical then application is you will become an empathetic person. You will become someone who is almost clairvoyant. You will become someone who is intuitive, who is not a keen and divisive thinker. They're not using their mind to deduce, which is simply another word for reducing or atomizing the world. That's a Western way of thinking. You're not now that type of person. You're an integrated person who has no answers. You only have harmony, you have resonance. And that resonance is still as powerful, I think more powerful than to struggle within the power structure. I think that they both are doing powerful things, but the one is ultimately encapsulating the other and is, I don't want to say truer because I don't know that that's the right notion. It just is what is. Um, this is a real amalgamation of Eastern and Western thought that is not original thought. I mean, I've listened to a lot of people touch on these things. I will say, though, that there's a real dearth in the world currently of philosophical thought seeking to integrate things in these ways. Because unfortunately, almost all philosophical thought has been commoditized. And also, unfortunately, we're on the cusp of technological innovation that will, for better or worse, prove to us that all thought has been thought. And then what are we going to do? You talk about existential angst. Existential angst can only increase until a system crushes. And once a system crushes, you're back at the beginning. You're back at the genesis of all things. And that's the biblical message in Genesis 1. Why was there darkness upon the face of the deep? Why were all things without form and void? Um, you dig into the biblical kind of interpretations of that, you realize there's implication of unfathomable and infinite cycles.
Hmm.
And we're all that. We're all part of that. Um, I really don't know. I wish I could help you make practical application to entrepreneurialism, but
Well,
these
I
are
think you have
things.
in so many ways. Anyone
Well, I
that's listening
appreciate
to
you
this that's
saying
not
that.
pursuing something they have great interest in, to the point
Right.
where their clients come to them and they could spend a Sunday recording a conversation like this of leisure, is
Right.
clearly
Right.
missing the boat.
I think so. I think so. That's
And I
that
want to
maybe
say,
is
from one businessman to another, in the case, keep if you continue putting out what I see you doing with your expression through Instagram, those people, because your work looks fantastic, and we barely scraped the surface. But that sounded like a very strong sales pitch in the beginning. Like, why would I not want tile that will last 20 years? Money is no option. Value is the outcome. I only have so much time. I think you made a great argument for why someone listening, if they want to be, if they want the type of clientele where they could just give them blank checks, they'd want, the listener wants to listen to you. Now, you may not yet know where those people are or how to communicate with them, but
right.
that's probably
Well,
around the bend here.
yeah. Yeah, I'm at a disadvantage too because I know where a lot of them are, but it's not quite where I want to be. Um, I'm limited. I don't have manpower. A lot of these people that do have, well, here's what I'm actually looking for. I'm looking for a billionaire who's an artist because
They're out there.
they are
Yeah.
out there. Yeah. What I
I
run
don't know how
into
you
very
get to
often
be
is,
I don't know how you get to be a billionaire without being an artist.
yeah, I agree. I don't either, but I don't know how a peasant like me um, gets to them, which
That's
is
the
fine.
great,
I'm okay with.
irony of this conversation. Very
Right,
to pull you
right,
out of the materialist system and makes it, we're still in the system, right? Where
right,
we
right.
we we have to pull ourselves out of. It's like that's
Yeah,
your advantage, is the being the peasant,
yeah,
because it's the
yeah. I agree.
materialist concept, right? Is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what are you really? David Goliath. David had the advantage. David.
Right.
So it's the billionaire isn't looking for the commoditized Goliath that was once
Right.
you. The billionaire is looking for you, the peasant.
Yeah,
Now, of course,
yeah,
how you carry out that conversation, it's like, give me your armor, give me your helmet, give me everything.
yeah, yeah,
It-
yeah,
David
yeah.
didn't ask for that stuff. He was just given it.
Right. Yeah, and he ultimately threw it away and did his own thing.
Well, so an easy
So,
response would be just whatever you're charging, charge times 10 and start with that.
yeah, that is on paper, that's a wonderful way of going about it. I am not Jesus like enough yet. I meditate, but I don't float.
That's
Maybe
funny.
if I can learn how to float, I can cross that divide. But I have faith in what I'm doing because it I don't want to sound like a sensualist or like everything for me is contingent upon intuition and emotion, that sort of thing. Because I try to feel like psychologically I integrate these aspects of my personality, or even self of myself. But I'm not a great business person, really. And it is inhibited because of the notion of my thoughts. I say it's voluntary, but I cannot actually say that with too much confidence because I don't know. I really don't know. It could be me. It could just be me. and it could ultimately be ego and pride. But how do you reframe that when every existential or philosophical or religious or artistic path you have gone down has led you to certain conclusions,
Hmm.
and I'll continue down the path and I guess we'll see how it turns out ultimately. I
I
shouldn't say
think that
ultimately. Uh,
I mean I when we do our tile, we'll use you. Like, just got to interview with
mm,
my better half, so because she's ultimately in charge of that. But I'm saying
yeah.
like, so I think you're on the right track. Yeah, well, ideally, I'd say uh, yeah, I'm excited to see what projects you do next, because my big takeaway is that the energy that you put into your work, I think, has been revealed on a philosophical level in this conversation. And that type of
Mhm.
attention to detail, ability to see the whole chessboard, I would
Mhm.
say that's the type of person I would want to be working on my house.
Yeah, I don't, and I would say one of my Achilles heel in that regard is to apply that same meticulous advantage to business. Um, those things they're not a turn on for me. You know what I mean? They just don't do it for me in that way. And I think it could be that I'm in a process of self-discovery about these things that just hasn't got, I have not got to that point. I'm very willing to believe that. Um,
I
but
mean,
I don't know.
Wozniak needed a job, so you could just be that type of entrepreneur. The one thing I've learned from studying business owner, there's a million ways to skin the cat.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, just because many partnerships fail doesn't mean that partnership is not the route. Like, that would be just like
yeah,
saying the divorce rate's high, so don't get married. So I
right.
would say, if that's a scenario where you keep developing your keep pursuing your philosophy, and
Right.
ultimately there will be people that will attract you that want to help turn that into more of what it is,
Yeah.
proportional to what you want it to be. But like, I'll say it again, there's no jobs without Wozniak, Wozniak without jobs in that way.
Mhm.
So if you're more the Wozniak, what's wrong with that? I've just seen so
No,
many different
yeah.
ways that businesses are manifest.
Yeah.
That you don't have to be the business person,
Yeah. And I,
although you can
you're
learn more
saying,
and more about business if you wanted to,
right, right.
just like you learn
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, I think you understand about me because we've talked so much about books and that sort of thing. It's not that I've not sought the knowledge. I've read hundreds of business books. It maybe is more connected to what you're saying with there's no one person that is everything. If a business is going to be something more than what one individual can bring to the table, then there's an implication that there is no one individual who is without a lot of holes inside of them and things and areas where they need the Wozniak. They need. And so I think you're right. And it is, I have to say, it's early in the process. I'll turn 35 in a couple months, so it's not like this is a sealed deal. I'm not married to the path, but I am very cognizant of the path and I'm very aware of my own personal shortcomings in regards to those things. Because you have to imagine as well, you understand this, when your brain, it just goes a million miles an hour nonstop, that consumes a lot of
Mm.
your mental energy. And it consumes a lot of the things that you want to put your attention on. And so at the end of the day, we're all very finite in regards to where we allocate our personal resource and how we allocate it. To the best of my ability, I want to allocate it in the ways that feel and seem and also honor a logical path, as best as I can, and I don't have a monkey on my back there. I really do feel like that is how I operate. And it is, I think, an expression of faith that those things will unfold in time. So,
I'm drawn to think of, Schopenhauer had a inheritance. He got it from his father, who was a
mhm.
businessman. Kierkegaard's same situation, and Wittgenstein's father was huge industry. He gave away his inheritances, an act of rebellion. But these are leaders in thought that have impacted the world, diffused understanding. Like their parents, they were just business people. So I think about that
Yeah,
sometimes, like which path
yeah,
would they have been on had it been on the other foot kind of thing?
yeah,
Could
yeah,
there be
right.
a Wittgenstein without his patriarch who just built this insane enterprise? And where is it
So,
the in between?
did you know that Turing was a pupil of Wittgenstein, which is just
Oh,
fascinating.
Alan Turing?
Yeah, he was a pupil of Wittgenstein.
Wow.
So, sorry, this is an aside. I'm not trying to veer us from. I just thought you'd find that fascinating, because Wittgenstein was really getting at uh, mind-blowing conceptualizations of intelligence, and like you got a guy like Noam Chomsky. Chomsky was a little, I don't know. I read Chomsky, and there's a lot of sloppiness in his work that is not in Wittgenstein. And then you look at his student Turing, who essentially ushered in this age of AI. I mean, that was Alan Turing. Um,
Hmm.
sorry, that's like I said, that's a complete side note. I just knew that you would appreciate that bit of information. It blew my mind when I read about that. Um, so non-connected. Let's get
Yeah, I mean,
let's get back to
in
what I'm saying.
closing, because part one here of
Mhm.
business philosophy 101, what would you say is has stuck out as a theme for this part of this conversation
Um,
that the audience can draw some
yeah, well,
solace from?
what I would actually say most practically is we're touching on a lot of things that are going to go over a lot of people's heads. And I would say to that person listening, that's okay. I would say to that person that the gist of what I'm saying is do your best to discover who you are personally,
Hmm.
and do your best to form and mold and create the thing that you're trying to create around this idea of human authenticity, not manipulation, not tactics, not a power struggle. And that takes a lot of reflection. That takes a lot of honest. This is the catch 22, the desire to lose desire. Um, so that's how I would conclude it. I would conclude it by saying I apologize if it was heavy, not to you, because I think me and you enjoyed this, but to that person who maybe this might not encourage everyone. So I would say something very encouraging in the end, and that is if there is a quote unquote going wrong or not going wrong, you're not going to go wrong if you take the time to think about the path that you're going down and where does it lead you? Where will it take you? Will you ultimately feel any different at the end of that path than you do right now? And quantify it. Ask yourself in which ways, because this isn't a romantic notion, this is a notion of the poets. The things that matter, they're right there. for anyone. I love your thing of culture matters. Culture is right there for anyone. You don't need what you think you need. If you want it, that's different and that's okay. But if you think you need it, then you're driven in a way that long term will probably not be good for your internal state, I would say.